OpenAI just released GPT-5, their latest version of ChatGPT, and let's just say there's a lot of drama. People aren't too happy, suggesting the model doesn't provide any sort of noticeable improvement, calling it a disaster or a piece of garbage, and still a massive looming mystery of when there will be some profitable AI software companies. When are companies outside of Palantir going to actually start making money? Today we're going to quickly look at what people are saying about the latest model and if it's actually true, how much money OpenAI is actually making from their operations and ChatGPT subscriptions, and lastly talk about how the dynamics and conversations surrounding OpenAI right now in this economy compare and contrast to some of the other companies that we saw during the dotcom bust, and what ended up actually happening to those companies. It may not be as bad as you thought, or maybe worse. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Let's get started. What are people so riled up about? We can see GPT-5 being labeled as a disaster, horrible, the biggest piece of garbage even as a paid user. All right, first things first, I'm gonna spare you from the hour-and-a-half long presentation and just go straight to the source here. But GPT-5 was claimed to be a major breakthrough by Sam Altman, the CEO. And GPT-5 is getting incrementally better with each release, according to some of these benchmarks that they reference. However, these benchmarks aren't always the most important thing. Typically, when you're selling a product or a service to a customer, you want to look out for the things that they really enjoy or the things that they really don't enjoy about the product or service. And that way you can tailor the experience and make changes to fall in line with what the customers actually want. And although these benchmarks do continue to get more accurate with each incremental release, there is one massive change that isn't exactly obvious on the surface, hidden behind some fancy and technical terminology: this unified system approach. At first you think, oh, a unified system? That sounds great. A smart, efficient model? Why wouldn't I want that? Well, you see, GPT-5 is a deeper reasoning model. In other words, it can take some time to think, intended to reduce inaccuracy and hallucinations. In other words, the AI model just making something up. And the user interface is quite pretty. And it also leads you to believe that you are using GPT-5, which technically you are. The problem is GPT-5 has this router or middleman that actually decides on its own which model to use based on the conversation type, complexity, tool needs, and your explicit intent. In other words, it's going to route you to a cheaper model when it can because they want to save money. And are they upfront about it? Well, yeah, I guess, in a way. It is one of the first items that shows up on their recent post regarding GPT-5. But again, it's kind of hidden behind this terminology and you might glance over it. But why is this a problem? Why are they even doing this? Sam Altman and OpenAI aren't stupid. They know they're losing a ton of money and they need to find ways to cut cost while still investing a stupid amount of money into research and development to create and provide better models. And as you can see here, we have the estimated training cost of each of these sequential models from GPT-3 to GPT-5 today, and their accuracy on a common benchmark test that essentially evaluates general knowledge and problem-solving abilities across a wide range of topics from law to mathematics to coding, etc. And the better the accuracy, obviously, the more we can rely on the answers that it's providing. And again, OpenAI sees this, they understand this, and see the trend of just how much money they're spending on training and how much improvement in performance they're actually getting for their dollar. Now we're going to talk about this a little bit. The diminishing returns of investment. Diminishing returns is a concept that happens everywhere in business and life, and it's clear here as well. At first, it's really easy to get a model from, let's say, middle school intelligence to high school intelligence, but as you work your way up the ladder, so high school to undergrad to postgrad to PhD, the cost to make those small incremental improvements increases exponentially, but the rate at which you improve pretty much curbs out and comes to a halt. And that's what we're clearly seeing here. We have an exponential jump, a 5x in cost to jump 5 percentage points in accuracy. And like we said, we see diminishing returns everywhere. This is you. You're about to go out and get some tacos from your favorite local Mexican restaurant, and you love tacos. You have one taco. This is a taco, and use your imagination. You have 2 tacos, 3 tacos, 4, 5, 6, and you start to feel it after 6 tacos, 7, 8, 9. And this is nothing against the tacos. These tacos are some of the best you've ever had. But unfortunately, your enjoyment with each sequential taco starts to make you less and less happy. In other words, the marginal utility or the happiness you get from each taco tends to diminish with time, right? The first, second, third taco, they're great, but with time, you slowly curb out and eventually completely stall and throw up if you eat too many tacos. You get the idea. And so as this cost is exponentially increasing, but the rate of improvement of the performance of the model is coming to a screaming halt, they're gonna lose a lot of money. How are they gonna pay their bills? Well, we'll get to that. But first, as you can see, it's pretty clear that these models are getting more and more expensive for them. So what's the plan? Well, if we can have GPT-5 reroute some of these queries to these other cheaper and also worse models, then we can start to save some money. And so basically we can sum up GPT-5 with this. On the surface, it's beautiful, it's breathtaking. The UI is clean, it's attractive, it gets you excited, you want to use it, you want to try it out. But when we look a little bit deeper with this unified model approach, we can clearly see that GPT-5 is what you think you're using, and you are, but you're inherently going to be rerouted to these other worser performing models. One, if you don't have the GPT-5 subscription, and two, if your query doesn't require deeper thinking. So yeah, basically GPT-5, which is a very high performing model, is a facade to feed these other models your queries. And again, we could talk about the drama all day long. I think at this point, it's just popular to have a negative stance on AI for various reasons, taking people's jobs, hallucinating and saying things that are completely fabricated, having inaccuracies and yada, 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 whatever. We could talk about it for another 45 minutes, but all we know, it's popular to hate on GPT-5 right now. And I guess we're in the phase of software and shitification. And again, we're taking opinions from, anti-AI guys, so I'd say these are rather biased and rather negative leaning opinions, obviously. So take them with a grain of salt. There's obviously some great things that OpenAI is doing. Their models are getting better and more accurate. But again, regardless of all that stuff, we need to get to the data. What is the data actually telling us? Let's paint a clearer picture. Regardless if you hate it or love it, OpenAI is all in and basically losing all their money. But hey, don't you worry. They're still looking at a $500 billion valuation, which is private, so don't worry, retail still doesn't have the chance to invest and reap the benefit of this ridiculous growth that they are having, 500x from 5 years ago. Yes, you heard that right. And you think with this crazy valuation growth that profits would start to at least be in the near future, not necessarily right now, because there still is a lot of room for improvement and you got to spend a lot of money, as we talked about with diminishing returns, a lot of money to get any incremental improvements. And no, they're definitely not close to that at all. Between 2023 and 2028, OpenAI is expected to lose about $44 billion. And as I talked about in a recent prior video, these companies have more or less created an infinite money glitch in real life. If they're looked at as an infinite money glitch, then I think we can look at OpenAI as a money burning machine. And again, these are just projections. Things could change, but this is the way it's looking. So how are they able to afford this? Because obviously they're undergoing a lot of growth. But with a lot of growth, you got to spend a lot of money. So where's all the money coming from? And that's from private investment. This is another thing I went into great detail about last video. But when you rely so heavily on all this private investment just to stay afloat and to fund your operations, it kind of creates this house of cards, right? Like if your private investment falters, then your business can't afford to pay its bills. And we all know what happens when that's the case. I won't belabor the point. We all understand that OpenAI isn't profitable now and have no plans to be in the near future. Now, does this dynamic of, a company that's in a pretty hyped up industry with a crazy high valuation that doesn't make any money, does that remind you of anything? Does that sound familiar? Well, yeah, it does. Profitless internet companies with crazy valuations, losing money like no tomorrow, but growing really fast, so that's good. Fast forward today, profitless AI companies with crazy high valuations, losing money like no tomorrow, but growing fast at least. We can see Anthropic, Perplexity, and XAI, all companies losing money hand over fist, have valuations of 170, 18, and $200 billion respectively. And the theme is more or less profitless companies that are growing really fast, garnering a lot of hype, and investors are willing to pay a very steep price. As we can see, venture capital funding, in other words, private investment, is now allocating 71% of their funds to AI related business. And it's not just private investment, it's public investment too. We have 35% of the entire S&P 500 made up of just 7 stocks. Obviously, the overwhelming majority of those having some role in the AI boom, with all these guys buying from Nvidia. Nvidia also buying services back from these guys. Everybody needing Palantir, and I go over why that's the case and why Palantir is still primed for success in this video here, and every single other company on the planet needing some sort of AI service from Palantir. Basically, the whole economy is made up of these companies. The trend certainly isn't stopping, it's actually only speeding up, with Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta alone investing $364 billion into some form of AI investment. So again, OpenAI is growing very, very fast. And when you look at the headline number, when you see 12 billion in revenue projected for 2025, you think, well, if they're earning that much money, then like obviously they're doing pretty well. But no, they're more of the camp of the infinite money deletion glitch, projected to lose 44 billion over the next 5 years. Not great. And so coming full circle back to that dot-com discussion, we can see right here, this is your dot-com bubble. And this chart shows us the percentage of the S&P 500 that's made up of the technology sector. During the dot-com bubble, we were around 30 to 35%. In 2024, we were around 30. And now today we're up here, somewhere around 35. So today we're looking at the heaviest representation of technology in the S&P 500 that we've ever seen. Now, whether that's justified remains to be seen. And you know, there's probably a good amount of logical reasons that this could be justified and this could make sense. Technology is the driving force of innovation. It makes our lives easier. It makes our lives more productive. But typically when markets get so concentrated in one sector, that's really a time to start reevaluating and saying, hey, maybe this is a problem. Maybe we should start looking the other way. I think a lot of that is just masked by how fast the growth is happening in front of our eyes. We've never seen technological growth this fast. You can see here the time to reach 100 million users. We have the internet took about 7 years, and then we have ChatGPT took 3 months. Straight up 200 million users. Now again, a lot of this is just due to social media. Word and news spreads a lot faster than it used to, obviously. Accessibility, a lot of people have phones and have computers that have Wi-Fi capabilities, so they can simply use ChatGPT from wherever they are in the world. So obviously those two factors lead to this much quicker adoption, but 3 months to 100 million users is quite bonkers. But again, right now, it's just important to keep in mind OpenAI loses money on every single paying customer, not just free customers, paying customers, and obviously the free users as well. And this rate of loss is only increasing, with basically all of their revenue coming from subscriptions to premium versions, which doesn't seem to be getting a popular rep on the street right now. We don't know how sticky, or in other words, how long these customers are going to keep coming back. Usually people aren't willing to continue paying for things that remind them of stinky trash in their kitchen, right? So yes, the adoption curve is very steep. There's a lot of people using ChatGPT, and rightfully so. It can save a lot of money and time, but we saw the same exact thing in the dot-com era with internet companies, and we all know how that ended. Although there is one thing regarding the dot-com era that is pretty important to mention. During this time, when all of these profitless internet companies were being bought and eventually heavily sold off, all this money, well, a lot of this money went to building out internet infrastructure, which today is obviously the backbone to basically everything that we do. I'd imagine at this point you probably use the internet at least once per day. So yes, there was a lot of overvaluation happening here, but building out the infrastructure was essential for powering the world that we have today. Basically everybody today relies on the internet in some form or another, whether it's for entertainment, work, finding recipes, finding restaurants to go to, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, the internet is the house for that service or product. So are we seeing that same transition happen right Now, yes, are a lot of these profitless AI companies going to go under? Definitely. There will probably be one big winner, maybe two, maybe three, especially when it comes to large language models. At some point, they're just going to be treated like commodities, right? Once we pour another, $1 trillion, let's go way up here, to get this accuracy from 95 to 97 to 99 maybe, eventually it won't matter what model you use. You'll just want the information or answer that you're looking for. So that inherently will kill a lot of competition, because what's going to drive a decision between Grok, Gemini, or ChatGPT if they're all really good and really accurate? So yes, a lot of those companies are going to die, but the infrastructure, the investment into these massive data centers, into all this AI compute, no matter who wins, that is necessary. So yes, it may be painful for a lot of these companies that do go bankrupt, and painful for a lot of these private and public investments in companies that fail and go out of business. But at the end of the day, the infrastructure will be there, and we'll be able to use it for whatever use case that we need to in the future. So at the end of the day, I know we didn't get too much into the actual drama, but the main takeaways are that GPT-5 is more or less routing you to a cheaper model that isn't as good as GPT-5, because it isn't GPT-5. It's one of those cheaper models that we looked at. And this makes sense because with each incremental model improvement, there's an exponential increase in the amount of money that they need to train that model. 3, they're losing a ton of money, and the speed at which they're burning all that money is increasing, but their valuation continues to skyrocket. And finally, how reminiscent this moment is, this moment in time that we're currently living through, how similar it is to the dot-com era. Again, we talked about the good and the bad part of this, but in either case, it's interesting and ominous just how similar these periods of time are. So I've seen a ton of negativity regarding GPT-5 and just AI in general at this point. I want to hear about your experience. What do you guys think about GPT-5? Were you even aware that this routing process happens? Did you think you were actually getting the deep thinking model? And how long can OpenAI continue to raise money at these insane valuations that are only getting steeper and steeper while the money they lose is getting bigger and bigger? I hope this video was helpful to you in some way, and I wish you luck diving into the world of GPT-5. I guess that's it for me. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.